Altenberg in Saxony, the venue for the BMW IBSF Skeleton World Championships. We are ready for the second and deciding day's action in the men's competition, and the bright sunny morning has given way to snow clouds, light snowfall over the ice track here in Altenberg. Welcome back to our coverage of the Worlds, everybody. Martin Haven and Bree Schaff with the third and then the fourth heat for our men's competition. And Bree, we've got a little bit of a change in the wind perhaps after the first heat. Well, our reigning world champion, Christopher Grotheer, started the day with the third fastest run yesterday, and the quickest run in the second heat cemented him in the top three. He lies 600ths off the lead. Two second fastest runs on day one for the young Bavarian Felix Kaisinger, this mercurial starter, just 400ths away potentially from winning a World Championship gold. But the man who is on top of the pile was the fastest in the first heat, third quickest run in the second heat, allowed his opponents to catch him a little, but Alexander Tretikov, the world champion in Samoritz in 2013, 8 years later, may grab his second World Championship gold medal to go with his 2014 Olympic title. So there is the top three, 600ths covering the three, but behind them a yawning gap to Yevgeny Rukoshwev. The junior world champion came from 7th to 4th in Heat 2, getting ahead of teammate Nikita Chegabov and then jumping up a further 3 places. So what about the 6-time world champion and World Cup champion Martin Dukurs? He sealed his 11th World Cup title this year, but he is down in 14th position overnight. 11th fastest after the first heat. He slipped away again in the second run. 32 sleds started yesterday, and they will all go in this third of 4 heats. Well, there will be a sweeping protocol, so it'll be a little longer gap between each of the, after each third sled. There's Alexander Tretikov. He looked relatively relaxed yesterday on the sled and off it, with new coach Dirk Matchens bringing a lot of German knowledge and experience, as well as new sleds to Tretikov's game. He's had 3 wins this World Cup season from 6 starts. He is in a very good place. Well, it has been really sliding in the icebox all weekend here and all last week in these World Championships in Altenberg. Deeply low temperatures, and it's going to be very tough to control again. Tretikov goes off first. They go in order of their standing overnight, so the leader will be the first to go. Should he retain the lead, he will be the very last to go at the end of the final run. Getting ready to get the second day of the BMW IBSF Men's Skeleton World Championships back underway with Alexander Tretikov, the overnight leader, Martin Haven and Bree Schaff ready to watch the action.
Tretikov had identical starts yesterday, so let's see what he pulls off here, a 495.
So many years, Alex has been the fastest starter on tour. This is the corner that cost him so much yesterday, but Bree, he's been clean in 4 so far on all 3 runs now.
Clean, but that was a lot of effort and a bit skiddy. So I think what we're looking at is a little bit different ice conditions changes. They might have changed their setup here coming into the race, but Tretikov was not as smooth in that section, which will cost him some time.
Well, the women's world champion Tina Hermann was saying the track felt very different today to yesterday even. The temperature different, more humidity for the second run. She said the real problem is you've got plenty of grip in the corners because of the G-forces, no grip at all on the straights because of the polished glass of the ice. So 56.63, well, that's better than his second heat and only 400ths away from his first. And conditions to the eye, Bree, look relatively similar to yesterday, where there was quite a bit of sort of light snow blowing around all day long.
They do. They look similar, but it was a cold, snow-free morning. And Martin, you highlighted a really important principle of sliding and the fact that there is no pressure in a straightaway, so you can't steer in a straightaway. But with these conditions, depending on how the athletes have their sled set up, like you see there with Tretikov, it's easy to break into a skid.
Yeah, hard to control, easy to go out of control, and a hit on the wall, that's pretty much the standard for everybody across the timing eye. He gets weighed, his sled gets checked as well. So, second overnight, what's that done for this young man? Felix Kaisinger has this reputation of being so anxious to do well that he blows a first heat and recovers in the second. Well, he didn't blow yesterday, and that's really good news for him. I mean, fantastic for his performance, but super important for his confidence as well. And I bet he rips out another humdinger of a start.
4:99, identical to his second start yesterday. And racing is a skill. I've said that many times, but for a junior, a 4-heat race is also another skill, an important preparation for the Olympic format. Ooh, great, that's a great cross into 5 there.
Well, it's his third World Championships. He was in 5th place here in Altenberg last year. A medal would be a massive reward for his work.
Really letting it fly there through Kreisel, but does he time those weights? That kind of a drop is just fine. There's a bit of pressure there, but if you relax into the sled, you can go straight into corner 11.
600 covers the top 3 after the first 2 heats, but he's drifting away, 3/10 back. This could be Kaisinger losing a medal.
Whoa.
4,300 slower. Wow, and that is the one loose run that in this tight group you can't afford. Yevgeny Rukoshwev of the Bobsleigh Federation of Russia was only 4,900 behind the leader overnight, only 4,300 behind Kaisinger. Kaisinger's just gone 4,300 slower than Tretikov. That might be just so nervous to do well that he's actually overdriving and too tight.
In the second day, you know, it still adds all of the same pressure, but even more so, especially when you're sitting in a position like that for a young athlete. We know that the German program teaches athletes how to win. However, this is a lot of pressure and an unprecedented season. Everyone is out of routine.
Well, here is the red vest of our world champion. Unbelievably in the women's race, from 11th place in the first heat, Tina Hermann came back to claim her 4th world championship in women's skeleton. And so far, all of last year's champions have retained their crowns. Will it happen to Christopher Grotheer?
Decent start, ties his first start yesterday. And Martin, I was wondering, looking at this list and how it shakes down, it is still feasible to have a German sweep. However, after Kaisinger's last run, that's not looking as likely.
It's not looking as likely, and the man who you might have expected to crack would have been perhaps Felix Kaisinger. Grotheer didn't have as fast starts as the 2 men in front of him, but look at the speed. He's doing what he did yesterday. He's taking the lead from Tretikov.
He's got the lead, but it's only 1,300s, and there was a big skid there out of Kreisel, plus a long straightaway.
But this is where he makes speed at the bottom, the best speed. He's going to lead into the final heat. What a recovery from Christopher Grotheer. Bang, look at that. Wow. Unbelievable. Well, last year, you could have been mistaken for thinking it was a flash in the pan from Grotheer, the perfect race, the perfect day. He's only ever won 1 World Cup race. He may be 60 seconds, well, 2 hours and 60 seconds away from winning his 2nd World Championship. And that was a champion slide. He was really in control here.
Beautiful run there. That is a great demonstration of just getting that minimal steering into 4, super relaxed. Beautiful lines here. He was only 600ths out of first place, and he really capitalized on that position this run.
Yeah, with 2 heats, 600ths, that's basically a dead heat, isn't it? So he's got the racer's haircut, and that may well be what brings him some of that championship feeling. So, with Kaisinger stumbling, let's say, what about this young man, the junior world champion, Yevgeny Rukoshwev of Russia, so of the Bobsleigh Federation of Russia. And Yevgeny, second world championships for him. His first was here last year. He's only started 2 World Cup races this year when the senior members of the squad have been absent. Essentially, when they came here for more training, he was their representative in the World Cup. But look at that, 7th fastest in the first heat, 4th in the second heat. He moved up to 4th place overall. And this young man was 13th here last year. So that is the progress he has made. Now, what's going on inside that helmet, Bree? They always say every sport, every game is won in the 6 inches between the ears, and that's the key for him here.
And Martin, it's those 6 inches that are processing all of the information on this track at such high speeds on unprecedented ice conditions. The coldest, hardest ice any of these athletes have seen all season long. That was a great exit of 4. We did see him working harder than Christopher Grotheer. However, well managed for someone who's not on home ice. And it must be noted that he was 24th off in the start order first heat yesterday.
Third best speed, that's quicker than Kaisinger. It's not about catching Grotheer, at least not yet. It's about somehow getting on terms and getting ahead of Kaisinger and having a shout at a medal. Still third best speed. He's losing ground to Grotheer. He's losing ground to Kaisinger as well. Comes across the line, 56.89. That is quicker than Kaisinger. Kaisinger a 57.02, so he closes the gap, and he is now half a 32 hundredths out of a medal. That is a huge ask. It requires Kaisinger to give it away, but Rukoshwev, what a World Championships this young man is having.
And they do have a German coach now, so they've got all those lines, but it's a matter of getting comfortable with them. You see his toe coming out. He's just visibly working a bit harder than Grotheer and dropping a toe in order to do it, which does cut more ice.
Well, Grotheer's moved from 3rd to 1st. Tretikov down to 2nd. Kaisinger down to 3rd. Rukoshwev holds his place, you would think. He was 13 hundredths quicker than Kaisinger, so he's narrowed that gap. Is that enough to leave breathing space ahead of last year's bronze medalist on this track, Alexander Gassner? Gassner's had his first 2 ever World Cup race wins this year. Finished in the bronze last year, his best World Championship result as an individual. He already had a team bronze a couple of years ago in Koenigsegg.
He wrapped up yesterday just over 6/10 behind our leader. And a beautiful line 4 to 5 there. It makes me wonder if everyone is coming into today with their most controllable setup available.
Well, there was so much skidding and sliding and legs akimbo yesterday. You've got to think that they're looking at that second best speed, and it's below the Kreisel where the Germans really motor away from everybody else.
He's having a beautiful run here. The question is it just too controlled? Nearly a second back behind the pace. However, Grotheer had an amazing run.
And the speed is good. He closes again. 5 hundredths closer to Rukoshwev. But again, defending his medal may be tough. Well, while the champions have remained the same in all 3 disciplines so far, the podiums have had a different look to them. For a start, no Axel Jung this year. No Marina Gilardoni, last year's silver medalist in the women's competition either. Neither of them were even here. And Gassner, unlikely to make the podium again. A little bit more steering than maybe he'd want in 4.
He was so controlled. This run was so beautiful. But again, he's going to get to the bottom and say, okay, where can I make some adjustments? I would bet we're going to see him flying a little bit loose on heat number 4.
A little bit disappointed with his day so far, I think. and with yesterday, Alexander Gassner. But for Matt Weston of Great Britain, that's a very different story. Lying in 6th position overnight, and he's about 2/10 behind Gassner, and about 1/10 ahead of Nikita Chegabov. 7th and 12th fastest starts. We know he's got more speed in him. Let's see what he's got this morning. 5:04.
I understand Matt is very comfortable on this track, and that is a testament to his style and also maybe his personality. Oh no, big hit there out of 4. That is going to cost him. We did not see mistakes like that yesterday.
This is his 2nd year of sliding. Last year raced in the Europa Cup, but this year he's been in the World Cup. He had 2 training years before that, but only 2 years of competition. Oh! And the latest exit we've seen off the Kreisel so far. And pedestrian speeds now. Top speed at the bottom, 118. He'll be lucky to be in 3 figures. Yeah, down to 90 kilometers an hour, and the sled won't make it out of the end. So a crash off the Kreisel and a real disaster for Matt. 61.36 run. Well, we've seen many get close to that off the Kreisel, Bree, but that's the first we've actually seen really dumped off his sled.
Right, and it reminds us that we are watching the best in the world, but it shows the potential that that Kreisel has. I'm sure training saw a lot of that as well. So the big waves aren't a problem, but he did have a huge dip there after the first wave. So once you get off on that pace, a bit off rhythm, if you try and trust the end like you need to do on race day, he's just up in the lip there and over. Oh, that's such a disappointment. What a bummer. Airborne and on his back. And Martin, I tell you, that ice, even as smooth as it is here in Altenberg, that is a burn like no other. It feels like cement at that speed.
Yeah, it might as well be hitting the road at that speed, as you say. So Matt Weston, physically and mentally, that is a huge blow. He'll shrug off the discomfort, but he needs to try and regroup, because that will see him probably drop way outside the top 10. It certainly opens up a top 6 finish for Bobsleigh Federation of Russian athlete Nikita Chegabov. Chegabov, our Olympic silver medalist in Pyeongchang, behind Sunbin Young of Korea and the now retired Don Parsons. 8th in the first heat, 5th in the second. Well, he's had a very so-so season this year. 1 podium, and that was in the first race in Innsbruck. Missed a couple of races, the second one before Christmas in Innsbruck, and missed Samoritz as well, both of which were spent training here. But it doesn't seem to have turned his form around. He struggled with the Dirkmaschen sleds that his teammate Alexander Tretikov has gelled with. He's on his old familiar Schneider, so he's in his comfort zone, but it may not be a fast zone.
And comfort is the critical element here in sliding sports, because even if you have the fastest equipment, Martin, if you can't relax on that sled, if you're not confident on that sled, confidence is a huge factor coming down the track. And so, yes, athletes play with that often, but it makes sense to go back to whatever you're comfortable with just to find that time and rhythm.
Well, speed 1:08.5. Christopher Grotheer the fastest, 1:11 there. 4th best speed. He's finding something at the bottom. He's going to get ahead of Matt Weston. Weston's time is going to see him possibly even drop out of the top 20. And a 57.29 slide. Well, that's his 2nd fastest, but yeah, not much to write home about with that one, I'm afraid.
No, especially compared to the field here. Coming into Kreisel, he gave that a good first steer, and notice how parallel he is. But then when you see the nose start to dive a little bit, the rhythm gets a bit off. It's highly controlled. And he has an okay exit there, just lost a lot of time. That wall hit is common.
It's hard to fathom where Chegabov is going wrong. The start isn't quite where it used to be, but hard to fathom as well is where it all went wrong for Thomas and Martin's Dukurs. Thomas Dukurs in 8th position overnight. Brother Martin's down in 14th. For neither of them are these familiar positions. First heat for Thomas, 5th fastest, not so bad in there swinging. Second heat, only 10th best. That's not good news.
Ooh, 5:19 start. His starts were 5:12 yesterday.
Yeah, and that's unusual. The two Dukurs brothers are so consistent at the start. They're so consistent in their drives with their equipment, and their fitness has been so good over the years.
And unfortunately, in this race series, they've just been consistently off. We've seen them with consistently off lines, which is very, very bizarre for this pair that has more experience, I dare say, than anyone else in the field.
Well, you wonder what they've brought with them for the end of the season. Don't forget, they've been on the road a long while since Christmas, and nobody was expecting, well, morning temperatures of -20, other than in St. Moritz, and I'm sure a St. Moritz runner isn't going to work for you here. 57.34, 7th fastest sled, i.e. slowest, other than Matt Weston, who crashed. And Thomas Dukurs has not been out of the top 10 in a World Championships since 2009. He made his debut in St. Moritz in 2007. This is his 12th World Championships. And since he's really hit front-running pace, this is comfortably his worst performance.
He is currently in 8th place, and when you look down this list here, Martin, you don't see a ton of athletes aside from his brother, but that's still a bit of a long shot there. And of course, Sung Bin Yoon,
Yeah.
the reigning Olympic champion, who we will get to later, has had an awful week here.
Yeah, some of the big names have had some of the worst times. 7th last year. Thomas may well end up 7th this year. What about Mattia Gaspari? Bronze medal in the Team World Championships with Valentina Margaglio last year. And they'll be looking forward to that, I'm sure, with great excitement. That comes up first thing on Saturday morning. But first, well, he was 13th in Heat 1. 8th best speed in Heat 2. That was a really good second run, and he needs one of those again.
Martin, it's really fun to see this Italian program coming into its own. They've got a rich sliding history. Of course, they used to have two home tracks there, and are looking to another Winter Olympics in 2026.
Yeah, Milan Cortina, the venue. We never slid skeleton in the modern era in Cortina. With the unrefrigerated concrete walls, it was a pretty brutal place. I'm gonna ask a few of the old hands about that. Little flop off the Kreisel. 4th best speed, though. And he's motoring on. He was a bit loosey-goosey yesterday, trimmed out for speed, and he's doing the same again. Has he got enough to move ahead at the line? How close does he get to Thomas Dukurs? But he moves ahead of Matt Weston. So it will be 8th place after this heat. Last year, Mattia just coming back from 2 years away from the sport because of a series of injuries that started with a really bad Achilles rupture. Last year, Mattia Gaspari was 26th in the men's race. So this is a real return to form. It's been a tough season for him, being away for racing from racing for so long, but he's definitely finding form again.
He was so relaxed in that Kreisel, got a little bit of height on the end, but handled it very well.
Well, he always has a
Straight
little
back
bit
to
of a
form right after that hit.
happy-go-lucky, yeah,
Next round, hopefully. Let's see.
happy-go-lucky, relaxed attitude, and actually that freedom of mind is probably a great bonus.
It certainly is,
sleds
especially
down.
with the amount of variables in this sport.
Yeah, no question. 9 sleds down, little bit of track sweeping before the 10th, and that is Austin Florian of the USA. And like his fellow North American sliders, I'm sure was watching on the stream the races before Christmas going, oh man, come on, let's just get out there. 22nd last year in what was his second World Championship appearance. He made his debut in Whistler, where he finished in 8th position. And he may not be too far away from that, looking at a top 10 run here. Improved on his second heat, and again, after 3 days of different weather in training on each day, race day again yesterday dawned different, but then today, maybe it's a little more the same. So let's see if he can capitalize on the experience and produce another top 10 run.
5:06 start. That is quite a bit slower than his starts yesterday. And Martin, we've been seeing that across a lot of the field, so it does make me wonder if the start is a bit sticky up there.
Or maybe one of the grooves isn't getting as much use and therefore tends to be a little bit frosty. It'll kick off the take on to corner 5.
Austin was 9th in the second heat yesterday. A little drop off corner 9, no problem, handled well. Good early entrance into Kreisel. Cranks that first steer. Uh-oh.
9th best speed. And don't forget, by that stage, Matt Weston was already hemorrhaging speed. So this is the slowest sled so far that hasn't had the big crash. But it will move him up a spot. Weston is, I'm afraid, Weston is very unlikely to make a 4th heat. 5.7 off the lead, and 20th was 3.09 seconds back. So add another, I'm not sure. It's going to be tough for Matt Weston to get a final run. But for Austin Florian, doesn't make up much ground on Mattia Gaspari ahead of him.
Nope, and up in the wood there at the exit of Kreisel, dropping onto his runners. Yeah, it's when they say you need to relax after that and you're getting jumbled around. Also, your saddle might be piercing your ribs there. Oh, that is such a bad feeling.
Well, he was 5 Ks down on top speed compared to Mattia Gaspari, and 8 Ks down on the fastest sled, which was our race leader, Christopher Grotheer. Last year's world champion jumps from 3rd to 1st in Heat 3. So 10 sleds down, 22 still to go, and only 10 spots left in the race. Sammy Meyer on the fringes of the top 10 overnight. After a 9th fastest run in the first heat, he slipped back with mistakes in the second. Let's hope he slept well and is relaxed, gets a little kicked over out of the spur to the left.
Yeah, working really hard. We saw that in the women's race earlier with Katie Ulander, and he continues to work hard to try and keep that sled in the middle of the track at the top corner. Ooh, hit out of 4.
Now maybe if the speed dropped away in the second heat yesterday, he's just gone for a more aggressive setup. A smaller contact patch means less control, but less friction, and that's higher speed. But he's not finding the speed he needs.
No, Austin Florian did open up a little room for him to potentially pass, and that exit of Kreisel will help, but he's still 2.5 seconds back off of our leader, Christopher Grotheer.
But how close is he? Does he jump to 9th? He does. He jumps Florian by 0.6 of a second. Whoa. So 2.64 back, but Austin Florian slipping out to 3.2 seconds back. So Sammy Meyer moves back into the top 10. He is currently 9th.
We've got a tight pack here down in this range, and so we could see a few athletes jump Austin Florian there. So note the right groove is where he then, it kicks him straight to the left there, and so now he's just trying to gently pull himself back from going too early into corner 1. And the usual Scorpion. Oh, no, and on his side. Wow, that's a great downtime considering he was riding on a speed suit for a bit there.
Yep, sliding up into 9th position. So is there a chance for Amadeo Banis as well to pick up a spot? He was not too far behind Austin Florian. Only 1300s behind the American in 12th place after the first heat. Was top 10 after the first run.
And again, that groove kicking him left just a little bit. Oh, big wave there. And groove is very much a personal choice, Martin, depending on what side you push on and what hand you push with. So, or if you push with two hands. And so oftentimes you get into a situation like this where you have a preferred groove, but you see it kicking a certain direction and you decide just to gamble with it.
Or to be ready for it, because changing the setup and changing the groove, you certainly won't change the hand you push with, but changing something you've practiced all week is never a good idea in the middle of a competition. 10th best speed, but he is ahead of Matt Weston and Austin Florian and Mattia Gaspari and Sammy Meyer. He moves up from 12th to 8th with a searing run. Amadeo Banis of Italy jumps his teammates by a 10th. That is a third heat to be proud of.
A 57.26, that was just a 6th place ranking run so far.
Well, now this kid is a mercurial slider. Yeah, some days he's great, some days he's, little better than average, but that was a big run.
And popped a wheelie there out of, with that hit from 4 to 5, but managed to just bring it back down and avoid the speed suit section.
Yeah. So what's his secret? How is he finding the speed with all those mistakes still? You can almost hear, can't you, his neck cracking away there as he does that. 6th best run from Amadeo Banis, 10th in the first heat, 12th in the second, 6th in the third. So there is time to be found. Track sweep for Florian Auer now, son of Christian Auer, the second of the sliding Auer brothers. Christian, multiple world champion and World Cup champion in the early days of skeleton. And brother Alex was a skeleton slider before Florian as well. They competed together for a number of years. Alex retired after 2018. So we've already seen Sammy Meyer in 10th position, moving up after the first heat, well, moving up a couple, then getting pushed back one. And so far, the progress has been forward for Florian Auer. 15th in the first heat, 11th in the second. Two 5:24 starts on day one. Needs to be as close to that as he can again. Right, so he's in the left groove and goes a little slower. Amadeo Banis in the right groove matched his starting performance. And it's likely that most pushers will be right-handed, and therefore the sled runner is likely to be in the right-hand groove, so maybe the left is getting less use and a bit more frosting.
Exactly, and the end of the groove, Martin, can also chip away a bit, and that can kick an athlete left or right, but he's having a decent run here, quite controlled.
7th best speed, don't forget, he was 13th after the 2 runs yesterday. Good speed at the bottom, that could pick him up. Top 6 speed, he's already ahead of Matt Weston and Austin Florian. Next target, teammate Sammy Meyer, and he gets ahead of Sammy. No, he doesn't. 11th at the line, a 10th behind Sammy Meyer. So the two Austrian sliders battling for a top 10 finish, a 10th apart. Florian Auer finished 17th here last year, Sammy Meyer 19th, and they are battling each other for a top 10 finish in the final heat. Again, good progress from the Austrian skeleton duo.
And identical starts for those two as well. Yeah, all of this looked fairly controlled. Those are the consistent runs that help you in a 4-heat race.
Well, if you want to talk consistent, this man is 6 foot of consistency. Not sure I've ever seen a race like this for Martins Dukurs. A 6-time world champion, an 11-time World Cup champion, nearly 60 wins in World Cup racing alone, and yet 11th after the first heat, 17th fastest in the second heat.
That was what was so baffling yesterday, as we all expected him to make a monster comeback. Oh no! Same problems as both runs yesterday. Really struggling to get under that second pressure of 4 and get a decent entry into 5.
His spidey senses are letting him down in the biggest way. Martins Dukurs has so much feel for the sled, so much feel for the ice, and has raced on these tracks so many times. He knows them inside out, back to front. And something in the equipment they've set up for this weekend is just not working. 10th best speed. So this is a man in his 12th World Championships. He's won half of the world, more than half the World Championships he's ever entered. And a 57.65, third best start, 12th best run. He separates the Austin Florian and Florian Auer. He separates the Florians rather in 12th place after 3 heats. 3 seconds off the pace.
All right, this is the second pressure that he starts steering quite soon, and it almost drove him into a bigger dip and put him higher on the end. And that is not something we see with Martins, which is a timing issue, and just tag that wall as hard as he was doing yesterday. Oh, and on the speed suit, the nearly slowest line possible there. I just am baffled. The rest of his run did look more classic Martins. It was very clean, gorgeous exit of Kreisel, but that 4.5 just toasted him.
Astonishing stuff. Next up for Switzerland, Ronnie Ardasset. 17th in the first heat, a 15th fastest run in the second, brought him up into 15th position. 2/10 behind Martins Dukurs of Latvia. Normally, if you're 2/10 behind Martins, there's a pretty decent chance you're in the medals. Not this weekend. Oh, and he gets kicked out as well. He was ready for it, but it still threw him sideways and cost him a bit of speed.
And at some point, you do ask the race directors to take a look at that groove. Oh, no, what? That classic Scorpion, 4 to 5. But if you're seeing that many athletes struggle with a groove, I would imagine that's something they're going to take a look at between heats here.
But then we've had the women's race, and, you know, either they were or they weren't struggling with it. Maybe the extra speed and the mass of the men makes a difference, but I think that would have been adjusted. I'm sure they've recut the spurs this morning, as they do every day, freeze them in and then recut them, because they want this to be the best track anybody's ever raced on. May well be the fastest. We haven't seen any track records so far this weekend because of the lack of control. But Francesco Friedrich reckons it is track record weather this weekend. So 57.96 for Ronnie, 13th best run. He moves up ahead of Matt Weston. And he is now 3300s behind Austin Florian. That might be one ask too much.
And you do have enough time to get perfectly settled. It's critical to melt into your sled at that point so your input doesn't kick you out, but it is such distinct, visible direction that that sled took coming out of the spur there. Oh, and a desperate effort to keep himself straight. Out.
Yeah. And dragging a toe there, it is like using a rudder on a boat. If you stick it out into the flow on the right-hand side, it just slows you down fractionally and brings the sled around to the right. Well, if Martins Dukurs is out of position, so too is Sunbin Jung. We know part of what Jung's problem is. He only had 1 day of training here as opposed to the 3 that most, or that everybody else had available because of confusion over his COVID testing. He has tested negative all the times he's been tested, was tested going to Koenigsegg with the team. Didn't get to race the other day, but when he came back for some reason, it just fell through the cracks. He had a test on Sunday night, was supposed to be given a result, but it took 48 hours for it to come through. So he missed 2 days of training. And that on this track, in these conditions, if it was 2 or 3 below zero, that would be one thing. But nobody, not even the Germans, have ever slid on Altenberg in these temperatures before. So Jun, his first 2 heats in the race were his 3rd and 4th run down this track this year. 4:96 the getaway, so that's nearly as quick as his first day's second run.
And even aside from the conditions, Martin, when you only get 1 day of training, oh no, that's what we saw yesterday as well. When you only get 1 day of training, he had to go into run 3 race ready. Nobody puts their race runners on and polishes them for run 3 in Altenberg. So that was a tough way to adjust here coming into the race.
And the other thing, with the weather being so changeable during the week, what do you have for setup? You've got 2 runs in slightly different conditions on 1 day. It's stick a finger in the breeze and guess the setup. Now, Richard Bromley works so closely with Jun that he's got a very good feel for what his slider needs, but you have to have some input as well. 9th best run, 57.41. Well, that's much more like it. 18th and 13th on his 2nd day of training, 9th fastest on the 3rd day of training. By the time we get to the end of this, he'll be in the sort of position he might have been to start the World Championships, but the race will be over. Yeah,
be in the position that he would have been in heading into a race, saying, okay, I think I've got a decent idea of what's going on here, but he times the steer okay, but now he's got too much direction coming into that wall, and it does knock him off his sled a bit there.
Yeah. So 3 runs Jun had in official training. He's now had 3 more, so that is a total of 6, which, as everybody would have done going into the race. But 1 heat left to try and bring himself back up the order. Well, Jun in 13th place. Let's see what the Ukraine's Vladislav Heraskevich can produce. 14th in the first heat, a really good run. Only 21st in the second. It all got a little skiddy and out of control. What does day 2 bring him?
Nice and calm here, up in corners 1, 2, and 3. And you're right, Martin. Oh, missed the wave there, but caught the second one. So 2 waves in corner 4. If you miss that first one, it's important to smash the second, which he did and had a good result there. The question is if that's the fast line.
Well, with Matt Weston's disaster, he's going to move up a spot unless he too has a big crash out of the Kreisel. Talked my way safely out of that. Top 12 speeds from the 17th starter. But he's nearly 3.5 kilometers an hour down in terms of top speed to the fastest man, Christopher Grotheer. And Heraskevich across the line, picks up 2, gets ahead of Ronnie Ardasset of Switzerland as well. So 57.60. That's not a bad looking run for him. That is 200s slower than his first yesterday, which remains his best. So a loose second heat yesterday has cost him spots. Otherwise, he'd be knocking on the door of a top 10.
Yeah, that was a great run. Very controlled. 13th place so far overall. And there we saw that big first oscillation in corner 4, but he's smashing that second steer. You can see him working hard and had a beautiful exit as a result. And a great exit of corner 9 here. Ideal entry into Kreisel so that you've got your wits about you ready to time those steers.
Well, Vladislav Heraskevich finished in 14th place here last year. He is 15th currently, and he is 1700s behind 14th place Austin Florian. Next up, Craig Thompson, like Matt Weston and Marcus Wyatt, who follows a medalist in the World Cup season this year. Took a silver medal in the final World Cup race of the year in Innsbruck just a couple of weeks ago.
so close. He was very relaxed with those steers in 4, but it just wasn't enough.
He's another really fast starter. And just a bit more experience on the ice, another year or two, and you think heading into Milan Cortina, these 3 British athletes will have a great opportunity to perhaps challenge for medals again. 16th best speed though at the bottom. I wonder whether the sled and the runners have got what they need here. He'll move ahead of teammate Matt Weston, who was the best of the trio overnight, and he moves ahead of Ronald Ardasset as well. So he picks up 2 spots. So 57.50 for Marcus Wyatt, and that is 3800ths better than his best run so far. So a near 0.4 of a second improvement. That's a big step up.
And it's really exciting for this program. I mean, very rarely, the Russians, I would say, are the only team that across the board has fast starters. So that's very exciting news for the Brits as they continue to get experience and work these athletes up through their system.
I said Marcus Wyatt, I'm getting ahead of myself. I meant Craig Thompson, a really good run for Craig. Finished in 20th place last year and has now moved up to 16th position. 1 run to go. Athlete and sled getting weighed. Maximum weight is a major deal in downhill sports. Next up is Marcus Wyatt of Great Britain, 7th and 4th fastest at the start, 2 20th fastest runs. He needs more control. There's nothing wrong with the starting, but the skidding and the hard ice conditions have definitely been tough to deal with. Brits all slide on British-made BlackRock sleds. So they need to try and find a little bit more. It was a good third run rather for teammate Craig Thompson. Let's see what Marcus can produce. Bronze medalist in the second of our race weekends in Sigulda in Latvia. That was his World Cup medal this season. So sub-5 start, that's his fastest of the competition. He knows that he needs something, wants to catch his teammate Craig Thompson. And if he does, then that might put him as the top of the 3 British sliders rather than the 3rd. But a hit off 5, not going to help him much.
Having a decent labyrinth. Check out how he enters corner 9 here. Everybody does it a bit different, but he had a beautiful exit, just trying to extend that height long enough to miss the sneaky pressure on the end.
Now, the other deal here is that the top slider is likely from each nation to go into the teams competition. And that is another opportunity potentially to take a medal. Matt Weston and Maddie Smith were in 4th place last year, almost got the bronze. 9th fastest run, that's a huge run from Marcus Wyatt. Absolutely epic run. More than half a second quicker than anything he's produced on day 1. 3rd fastest start, 9th best run. If he'd had that kind of control on day 1, he wouldn't be looking at a top 15 finish. He might be looking at a top 6 finish.
That was a really consistent heat here. He anticipated that groove, wanting to take him in a really... He got his toe down and ready to mitigate that drift over there and had a great entry into corner 1. And not bad. That tap, you know, that is something that you will take over oversteering corner 4. That's that trade-off that we're always talking about. Whether you work too hard to get a line and scrub too much ice, that is a great transition there.
Daniel Romanoff next, 20th place in the second heat. He was 23rd in heat 1 and then laid down a 16th fastest run to break into the top 20 overnight. Now he needs consistency here. He will be ahead of Matt Weston at the line if he doesn't crash. But only the fastest 20 go through, and he is potentially in the danger zone.
Oh, that's his fastest start so far, and from the beginning, his head is up, his shoulders are up, he's dancing around, he's having trouble controlling that boat, you know, with those rudders, as we say, Martin. Just so many minor corrections. Look how high his head is. Not only does that make him stiffer on his sled, but that's a big wind resistance and aerodynamic loss there.
Now this is kind of what he was doing yesterday, isn't it? The sled's set up really loose and just dragging the toes all the way down every straight and through most of the corners to stop it from breaking into a skid. He's going to get ahead of Matt Weston at the line. He does. He's in 19th place. So he may be safe for the fourth and final run, but 57.73, that could have been worse. But he had a 57.69 in his second heat. It's certainly better than his first, a second better than his first run down. But he's not confident, Brie. That much you can see from the body language on the sled.
No, and depending on how much he's been at this track, it's easy to be critical there and as a coach say, hey, put your head down, shoulders down, what are you doing? But he is desperately looking ahead to all of these mousetraps, and mousetraps is a really friendly term for this track. There are so many spots that want to bite you in Altenberg.
Yeah, they're more like bear traps. Innsbruck, they're mouse traps. Here, they're bear traps. Well, it's his World Championship debut after his debut World Cup season, so his knowledge of Altenberg is going to be pretty limited. Christopher Grotheer leads Alexander Tretikov and Felix Kaisinger. 20 sleds down, 12 to go, and the man most likely to make it into the next heat is Seungwi Jung of Korea. 21st overnight. But unless he crashes, he will take a top 20 finish ahead of Matt Weston.
And he clocked the second fastest start of yesterday's second heat. So another bright featured athlete. Oh, it's hard. I mean, we focus a lot on start times, but here we are in Altenberg on the hardest, cleanest, smoothest ice in the world. And so there is so much more here at stake.
Also with a marathon, not a sprint as the start, so it really exposes those who have long distance speed as the fastest compared to those who don't. You get a big advantage here. 21st place at the moment, despite the fact he's passed where Matt Weston crashed. Is he in the race? He should be in the race. He is in the race, and Matt Weston will continue packing his bags. I'm sure he pretty much assumed that he was out of the World Championships. So making the race, Seungwi Jung for Korea. Now his teammate, Kim Ji-soo, was 2800ths behind him. He could take the place away from Jung. So it's Jung in at the moment, but Kim may be a threat.
If Kim can nail 4 to 5, he has a good shot at taking his teammate, because that's his left foot was full scorpion on the ice. That's a warm-up move, Martin, that you do in track and field to try and loosen up your back, not a 4 to 5 ideal move.
Well, that's why these athletes spend so much time stretching, because that's the sort of thing that would separate all my discs. So, Kim Ji-soo for Korea, 5:08 and 5:06 starts. Any 100th he can find now could make a difference. He's staring down the barrel of not making the final heat. 22nd start draw. He was 22nd in both heats. He's 22nd overnight. Katsuhiro Koshi with the sled. Well, he's got plenty of experience, raced here in the World Championships back in 2008. Koshi-san was not on the podium. The podium then, the first Worlds. Kristen Bromley, John Montgomery and Frank Rommel, they were the top 3. So,
that's a
can
fun
Kim
throwback list.
make it in?
Oh, wow. Lots of quick dancing.
And 5.11 not as quick at the start as he was yesterday.
Nope, but it's going to come down to this corner right here. Oh, already a big oscillation. Better than his teammate, relatively clean there.
And that might be the difference. If you keep another kilometre an hour on board from your start, maybe that might be enough.
Oh no!
Skidding.
Oh, that is a really late entrance to Kreisel, and that's going to hurt him. Now he's in full panic, smash all the pressures mode. It survived the exit, but that killed a lot of time. He's out of the mix here.
Yeah, he is. And that seals, I think, Jung into the race, and Kim will not make it through. Does not have the speed on board to trouble his teammate, and does not get by Matt Weston. Now, I am surprised at that. So, Kim Ji-soo, a 58.68 run. That is his slowest of the three. And yeah, he got out, offline and sideways coming into the Kreisel. And this is the straightaway that did for him.
That is a terrifying drift. Now, had he worked harder to go in early, he would have broken into a huge skid. And at that point, he knew he needed to smash the first steer, but then he got a bit confused and just started. See that drift there where the sled goes off parallel and now it's waving around? That is him guessing on steers and just trying to mitigate disaster on the end.
Yeah. That's where the brain is frozen and just going, don't crash, don't crash, don't crash, don't crash for 5 seconds until you either do or don't crash. So he is out. Next up, our 28th of 32 starters, and this is Canada's Mark Lynch. Second World Championships for him, having made his debut in Whistler in the Worlds. Shoulders tight together and a little bit of tap dancing to avoid the wall.
Yeah, Mark was in 15th after the first heat yesterday, but had a really rough second run and ended up with a 30th place run in the second heat.
Well, if he could find another top 15 run, and who knows?
Oh, decent exit of 9. They're just wiggling, trying to get stable going into Kreisel.
Yeah,
well
9 tends to lead you over to your right, and you want to be on your left. Oh, and a little skid, 13, 14. Clean exit, though. Well, decent speed at the bottom. 14 fastest out of 23. Is he going to be in? 19th, he's in. That is exactly the boost he needed. 58.01, it's not always quite as hopeless as it looks on this track. Again, imagine we were in Innsbruck, or maybe even in Lake Placid. If you're 0.3 of a second out of the top 20 on one run, you ain't getting in. Here, you can drive yourself in. This is quite the track.
It was close, but it looks like he did end up 21st there.
Did he? He did, yes, you're right, sorry. Got a bit overexcited there. 19th best run, 21st place, so he didn't quite make the race. 900s out.
He was so close. It came down to so many little things here in those skids in the straightaway and him trying to adjust a hit out of Kreisel. That's a bummer. He had it up until the last split.
Yeah. Really tough. Well, next up for Australia, Nick Timmings. And we will see another Australian slider in the monobob with Brianna Walker, who is one of the leading lights in women's monobob, trying to add a World Championship medal to her bunch of World Series medals already this season. 5:43 getaway for Nick.
Really struggled with that groove kick there.
His third World Championships, he raced in Winterberg in 2015, in Whistler 2019. Twin brother Dean did Innsbruck and Königssee between them. It's a nice little drag.
That's the risk of steering in a straightaway, Martin.
But he got the line he wanted, 17th best speed. He could well pick off Kim Ji-soo here. Does he get close to Matt Weston? He's 24th on the split still. 19th best speed at the bottom. Is it enough to move him up? 24th place, a 21st best slide. 58.40, that's his best run, so a PB. And I have to say, not sure when the last time he was on this track racing was, but it may well have been a while. World Championship best result, 26th in Whistler, and he will have exceeded that.
Oh, yeah, he came down out of corner 9 too early, and we saw him hammering another steer there because he could feel the sled pulling up and trying to pull him up on the end of 9, and then hit a pretty big oscillation and a dip there for the first loop in Kreisel.
Let me back in the country, please.
Yeah, that is a major issue with Australians. No, he's not kidding. So for American Samoa, Nathan Crumpton, little messaging with Crumpton this morning, and he was saying that his big problem is that he's just so tight in the Kreisel. The brain goes into do not crash panic mode, and his unconscious overrides what he wants his body to do. And of course, once you've started getting into that, talking yourself out of it is pretty tough. So for this former Ivy League triple jumper and part-time water buffalo wrestler, a representative in the Worlds for the USA, and now for the second time for American Samoa. He spent his winter in Innsbruck. So he's competed 3 times in the World Cup on the Eagles track this season.
Yeah, Nate did tell me as well that he's just looking to get through this heat and get out of here, because this is a really difficult track for North Americans especially. Martin, there aren't any tracks in North America that have a tight Kreisel like this. Oh, beautiful exit of 4 there. That's going to set him up with more speed than he wants going into Kreisel, so this could create some issues for him if now he's going in with the most speed he's had all race.
As long as he can stay on the left of the picture, the slider's left going in. Looking a little bit more relaxed there on the Kreisel. All right, well, he survives. And do you know what? If 4 flows, suddenly you're going, oh, I've got this. You know, maybe that's just the switch that the brain needs for going, okay, no, you're doing all right, you're in control, I'll trust you this time. Crumpton completes his World Championships with the obligatory rub across the wall. 20th best slide, a 58.11, and that is half a second quicker than anything he produced yesterday. And that, maybe that little bit of extra, feeling as he came out of 4 without hitting the wall in 5, just flipped the switch for him. So Nathan Crumpton completes his World Championships, and he will move up into 22nd spot.
That's a great run to end on. We could see him steer, we could see him release the steer, and he does crank the end of 4 there to clean it up, but worth it on this track right now to force those steers and get yourself online. And a great adjustment here as well as he started to veer away late into Kreisel, got himself a nice early entry. Yep, managed all of those, the timing of his steers. That's a great way to leave this track, testing out some confidence and letting it run in Kreisel and see what happens.
Well, next up is our 26th place athlete overnight. This is Basil Siebert for Switzerland. And Basil in his 2nd World Championships. He was last season's Europa Cup champion. That's the junior tier of sliding here in Europe. There's Europa Cup, there's North America Cup, and then above that, there's the Intercontinental Cup, which is the doorstep, really, for the World Cup.
He's not quite as clean as we saw him yesterday, But one of Basel's biggest issues right now is, of course, his start just being that far out of the mix. You don't really have a shot, but he's a very talented driver. And we saw some great exits of Kreisel yesterday, and again, nicely done.
Yeah, nice smooth looking lines. Body shape is good, long and lean. The form is good. Maybe not Gregor Staley type form, but very few are. 20th best speed. He's been rewarded for those clean lines. He's going to move up. Does he? No, does not quite get to Nick Timmings. So Nathan Crumpton made a big step forward. 58.86, not quite enough for Basil Siebert to follow in his, I was going to say footsteps, but I probably mean runner marks. Siebert 26th, Nick Timmings 25th. Kim Ji-soo slips all the way to 24th now, having initially been in the final heat. And Matt Weston 23rd.
And Martin, you can see those runner marks while you're in a track. It's amazing when you've been sliding a long time what you start to pick up just visually. The things that you would think you're going way too fast to ever see. So many athletes would tell me, I saw you in this corner, and I would say, put your head down, stop looking, just because the amount of time you spend on the sled. It's amazing how your senses adapt.
Kyle Murray for Canada next up in 27th place overnight. And Kyle making his World Championship debut, raced here a couple of weeks ago in the Europa Cup and Intercontinental Cup, and those were his first races since the end of last year's World Cup season 12 months ago.
And what we want to see out of Kyle here today in this run and his final run likely of World Championships is just gaining some comfort and control of this track. It was a bit of two wild rides yesterday.
Yeah, 4.5 didn't help him much. Let's see what he's got coming out of 9 nicely. He stays on the left, doesn't have to fight it too much into the Kreisel. And how's the exit? Not too late either, takes a tap on the wall. Yeah, starting to really get himself dialed in. Don't forget, this is only his second race weekend.
That's so much better than yesterday. He should be proud.
Yeah, second race weekend of the season, so super race rusty. 24th best run, 58.55, and again, 4/10 quicker than anything he produced yesterday. So the progression curve continues to accelerate upwards. 59.04, 58.95, 58.55. So in 3 runs, he's found a second, Bree. Or 6/10, 7/10 of a second. I mean, you know, it's the familiarity with the track and the conditions.
It is, and just getting yourself to trust what you know and what you worked for all week, and also just letting it all out on the line. This last run, he knows there's nothing to lose, so much more relaxed.
Yeah. So found half a second in 3 runs. I miscalculated rather slightly, but good final run for Kyle Murray. And like everybody else, getting the helmet off and the mask on is one of the major issues of life. 27 sleds down in our field of 32. Our final 5 to go. Austin McCrary of the USA. It's been a long day and a half for him. He was first on ice on Thursday afternoon at just after 1 o'clock local time. And in fact, 24 hours and 5 minutes later, he's getting his 3rd run. It's like a training weekend, isn't it? So Austin McCrary of the USA, 31 years of age, a World Championship debut for him. Had a couple of World Cup starts at the end of this year when the US team was finally able to travel. So this is a very daunting prospect to come to the toughest track in the business with the biggest reputation and take on the world's best here.
Take on the world's best in the most difficult conditions likely any of these athletes have ever seen. Big steer there to get control of 4, but it created too much height on the end. You just oversteered that too long. And the problem, Martin, is if you steer the pressure too long, you drive yourself into another dip and create a worse rise on the end.
This is an intimidating track at the best of times. It's got a fearsome reputation, and so you're going, oh, I've got to go to Altenberg. And then you get here and everybody goes, oh, this is crazy. We've never seen ice this hard. This is impossible. Oh, great, thanks. So for all the rookies, particularly like Austin McCrary, I mean, hats off. This is a really tough track to tame on any day. And this week, it's just the worst anybody's ever seen. 59.12 again. Well, his first heat actually 58.90. That was his best, so 59.12, his second best of the competition. But a learning curve of epic proportions for Austin McCrary here. Not just his first World Championships, but on the toughest track in the toughest conditions.
Yeah, so that was that big steer on the first pressure that then put him into a long dip, and so then he rose higher and later on the end and skid out and took the hit there. Oh, yep, and on his knee. Yeah,
well,
okay, and then he exited corner 9 a bit too soon as well.
Wasn't the first, may not be the last, and may not have been the worst through there either in corner 5. It claims a lot of victims, and there's a bit of hip needs attention to there. 29th place overnight for Mihai Pachiu. His dad is the coach of the Romanian bobsled team. He occasionally races with and has trained a lot with the Romanian team. But it's his second World Championship, his first since Eagles in 2016 when he was just 16 years old. Teammate Sebastian Anaki has raced a couple of times in between times.
5:15 start, not too bad. So far a bit better than we saw yesterday, and his form is great here.
Well, both Mihai and teammate Sebastian raced in the World Cup this year. They've been kind of swapping duties in World Cup. Keep them both qualified as much as they can.
Ooh, that was a great line there in a 13. Oh no!
Yeah, broke out into a skid out of 14. And across the line with a 58.77. And that is his fastest trip down the ice canal here in Altenberg as well.
The total time after 3 heats in
So 28th best run, 26th best run, 28th position ahead of Austin McCrary. So his first target will have been McCrary, was only 600s behind him overnight. So he picks one off.
It's always good to pick up a spot there. And again, so much of this, especially for athletes down in these lower rankings, is about learning and gaining race experience. He has a long future ahead of him, so long as he doesn't spend too much time here taking these hits. You need to avoid Altenberg at times for longevity's sake.
Yeah, Altenberg can make you old, can't it? So 21 years of age, Mihai Pachiu.
Can. I've seen it.
Yeah. Yeah. 20 at the start of training, 35 at the end. Next up, the youngest athlete in the field, Colin Freeling from Belgium. Hasn't made a World Cup appearance yet. This is his World Championship debut. Raced in the Youth Olympic Games to 10th place in St. Moritz last year.
Unfortunately, it doesn't look like Colin got the memo on that start groove and tagged the wall there going into 1, which is a huge velocity killer.
Well, he's raced here in January in the Europa Cup and Intercontinental Cup, so try to get a bit of experience on this track. He's still only raced on half a dozen tracks in his career so far. Ooh, gets a little tag.
We saw there what happens
Kreisel.
when you make too much of an effort. Yeah, if you do too much to try and get that entrance you want, again, there's no pressure in the straightaways, and especially on a skeleton sled where the runners are mostly round, the only chance to steer is under pressure, under G-force in a corner.
Decent speed at the bottom. So Colin Freeling on his World Championship debut, 29th placed run. He finishes at the moment in 30th position. And as ever, it's all about the learning. So 5:46 and a 59.57 downtime. He was quicker on his second heat yesterday by a couple of tenths. But it's all about experience of the tracks and this form of racing.
Oh, he had a bit of a rough load, and he was in supposedly the better groove, but I don't think he was settled enough.
Yep.
You have to be completely quiet as those spurs end, because as you can see, that ice is glass.
Yep. Well, Dad Stefan, a VP in the IBSF and the president of the Belgian Federation, Mum Daisy, I'm sure they'll all be watching at home. And the boy has had a good Worlds. From our youngest athletes to our least young, Jeff Bauer for Luxembourg. So from the big nations, like Bobsleigh Federation of Russia, like Canada, like the USA, like Germany, we also have the tiny nations. And Jeff Bauer is the one slider for Luxembourg in the entire World Championships competition. Now, one of the things that skeleton does is it allows you to be pretty much a one-man army, an army of one, but it does allow you to be self-contained, and that's what they're hoping that women's monobob will bring more of, bringing in smaller nations. So Jeff, in his third World Championships now, he raced in Koenigsegg, first of all, back in 2017, raced in Whistler to 31st place. And he's an aerospace engineer from Ohio, works remotely on tour during the winter to try and get as much sliding in as possible. And this year has perhaps been even more remote than normal. 5:58s in the first start, 5:61.
This is his first season here. He did do the Europa Cup and ICC on Altenberg as he's getting to know the track, but he got thrown for a loop there. Martin, did you see where he thought he was about to go, almost put his helmet on, and then had to take it off? On a track like this, when you get take out of your system's prep, that is really unnerving. But Jeff Bauer has a great attitude. I've coached him as the IBSF Emerging Nations coach, and he, no matter what hits he takes, he comes back up to the top and says, "Hey coach, what can I do? What can I fix?"
Yeah. And that's the only way. You've got to, you know, learn whether you're the best or the newest. You've got to learn. And that's exactly what he's doing.
Oh,
Little wild down in the fastest corners. He's having to fight the sled for the control at a 60.20. And that is quicker than his second heat by some margin. 3,400s quicker, but not quite as quick as his first. So Jeff Bauer completes his World Championships. He will likely be in 31st place. The one man on the start list who missed the race, and Mirambel had to pull out with injury, but 32 of our 33 who trained compete in the race today. And then the fast 20 go through to the final heat. And just a little late with the steer, and that means he's flopping off on the fastest part of the track.
Thank you.
But another
and I think if I heard correctly, it was all to the tune of Beverly Hills Cop.
Well, yesterday was Akwasi Frimpong's birthday. The man from Salt Lake City, Utah, originally from Ghana, then by way of the Netherlands to the USA. The story of his life has already been made into a film. And after what he felt was a little bit of a dispiriting day yesterday, I know from Coach Zach Lund that he's been given the memo this morning. Just go out there, enjoy doing what you're doing. You're doing what hundreds and thousands of others would love to try. As Akwasi said yesterday morning, go out and represent your entire continent. We've got Australians, we've got Asian sliders, we've got North American sliders, South American sliders. He's the only African slider in the skeleton business. And Akwasi, not the healthiest, not the fittest this year. It's been a tough summer for everyone, and he's no different, holding down a proper job, looking after his wife and his daughter back home in Salt Lake. I'm sure they will be watching. And Ashanti will be going, come on, Daddy, with all she's got. Akwasi, as ever, trying to enjoy his sliding, because Bree, the more fun you're having, the better the sled seems to go.
And in his Black Panther tribute suit to Chadwick Boseman there.
A 60.11 slide, and that is his best by 0.3 of a second. So an improvement. His first slide was a 60.75, so in 3 trips down, he has found 64 hundredths of a second. That's how fast he's learning this track. And I'm sure he would like to add all his thanks to the coaches and the rest of the staff and the athletes from Bobsleigh Federation of Russia. They've taken him under their wing this season, really been helping him a lot. And the result is evident.
And he's come a long way, Martin. Yeah, you can see, like, from the time that I had coached Akwasi in years past, he is able to time these steers correctly, and that's huge. He's got a bright future, and he's an incredibly inspiring athlete. Check out his social media. He's got a great presence.
And he is trying to inspire a whole new generation of sliders from Ghana to follow in his tracks. But you don't need much inspiration if you're a German slider. There are loads to choose from as a personal target or a personal hero. At the top of the pile, from 3rd to 2nd to 1st, Christopher Grotheer has taken the lead with 1 heat to go. Will he be able to defend his title like his teammate Tina Hermann did earlier today? Alexander Tretikov, 2100s back. Felix Kaisinger, he may still take a medal, but the challenge from behind might come from Rukashwev or from Gassner. Kaisinger must hold it together. It's going to be an intriguing battle for the medals and for the other positions inside the top 20. For the 4th and final heat, only the fast 20 go through, which means that Jung of Korea makes the cut and Mark Lynch of Canada does not. He, Nathan Crumpton, Matt Weston and the rest of them will be the only spectators trackside as we race behind closed doors for the 4th and final time in the BMW IBSF Men's Skeleton World Championships. To decide the medals, join Bree Schaff and me, Martin Haven, with the IBSF TV crew for the 4th and final run. 3 local, so 40 minutes from now. We'll see you then. Stay with us.